I recorded this video already today, and you couldn't hear it because I had a fan going, so attempt number 2. So I've been getting a lot of messages and comments, texts from people I know, and asking questions about the lifestyle and the diet and the fitness regimen, and I wanted to say thanks. I've, for some reason, made it my purpose or my calling to really research as much biology and chemistry and evolution and the available data to really understand the optimal way to live for me and my family. And I'm doing it for me because I was very ill at about 34. I was not only, I'm 5'9", but I was about 240 pounds. I didn't really weigh myself, but that's where I was. And I had severe problems. I had skin problems. I had erectile dysfunction. I had irritable bowel. I had hypertension. I had poor cholesterol markers. I was, by all measurable metrics, diabetic, undiagnosed. I didn't go to the doctor really, but I had blood work once a year done for work, so I have labs. And I can tell you that I could not go 2 hours without a meal or something to snack on. And I was getting nauseous and having hypoglycemic responses. Anyway, I was just very, very unhealthy. And I knew it was from my diet. So I tried everything along the way. I'm not a research scientist. I'm a journalist and an anthropology student for life. Those are the two things that I studied the most in school, in college, in high school, all of it. I was definitely focused on the sciences. But journalism, that's something, and I've written 5 fiction works as well, more if you count short works, but I love to find out stuff and then tell people. I guess, and my oldest is just like me. She loves to pass on information. It's hopefully something valuable for society. And that's kind of why I'm here, is because along this journey, it's really changed the way that I look at God. And that right there is going to lose a lot of people, and so be it. But I've been given a perspective on what I think God is. Not what, but who. That I feel like might be incomplete to some. So let me just back up. I've gotten all these questions, and I've been trying to pass on what I've learned. And all I've really done is tell people the science. But I haven't gotten into any of the spirituality or the philosophy behind it. So here goes. I wake up in the morning and I work out fasted. I believe this is evolutionarily appropriate. I don't believe humans woke up to food that just was sitting there very often in a hunter-gatherer state. I don't believe you need to eat this first thing you wake up. You don't need to consume calories. You also don't need to consume caffeine. Now here's where I'm going to tell you. It's not a do as I say, not as I do situation. I am not flawless. I make mistakes, and I am not even perfect adherent to my own beliefs, but I understand them. And one of those is caffeine is totally unnecessary, and coffee has carcinogens in it anyway. So it is a net negative, and that when I say binary, it means something is either a net negative or a net positive. And I can look at that from a spiritual and a biological, a chemical perspective and say with utmost confidence that what I'm saying is my best understanding of net positive choices. Okay. So I don't eat first thing in the morning, and I work out hard. I think that that's what humans did. I think that that's who we are. And when I'm ready to break, so I will normally have a pre-workout though. So there's my caffeine, there's my 5 calories. I don't count it as a broken fast. I'm not really concerned with that, other than trying to put up some data to show what I do on a day-to-day basis. But if I have a cup of coffee or a C4, I'm not going to count that. Most of the time, I'll just finish my workout and go home and have a cup of coffee and drink water, sparkling water, something like that, one of these cans. And then I'll eat my first meal at about noon or 1. And that's going to be about 3/4 pound to a pound of hamburger meat most days. I eat beef preferably over chicken and pork because cows are ruminants. They're the type of animal that can take this glorious sunlight. This sunlight hits the earth and creates these grasses, and these animals can live off of it and convert that and the nutrients in the soil into saturated fat and red meat and organs. And they're mammal organs, which means that they're the same as ours. And why that's important is the same reason why vegetables aren't a good source for most anything. And we're not plants. You are what you eat is probably a wise statement. If you need the nutrients to make a brain, for example, a brain from a mammal made of the same saturated fats would be highly bioavailable and probably benefit from that. And a lot of people don't know that humans peaked brain size just at the Neolithic Revolution or the Agricultural Revolution. So when we started growing more food and hunting less, eating less meat, for whatever reason, our brain size peaked and then it's gone down, whatever. So meat is healthy. Its nutrition is bioavailable, and we're drawn to it. Even the companies out here that claim to be plant-based, they're making it look like meat because it's going to trigger your evolutionary response to eat meat, man. It's simple. Beef is better than chicken and pork because if you can find chicken and pork that isn't fed corn and soy, it'd be a different story. But as most is, you don't want those. Corn and soy and vegetable oil is high in linoleic acid, which is bad for you. And chicken and pork that's fed those things is just as high. So you might as well be guzzling vegetable oil. Not to say I don't eat chicken. I'm just saying I know. There's a binary net neutral or positive or negative. And I would say that's a negative. But I go out in the sun. My body is comprised of saturated fat. Saturated fat is a stable fat molecule. It sounds so bad. Oh, it's saturated. Like, what? Do you even know what that means? Or it doesn't sound bad? Because what it means is that all the carbon bonds are packed. It's non-reactive. It's an inert fatty acid. And you want something like your skin to be made of inert fatty acids. Not monounsaturated fatty acids like olive oil. It's got one available carbon bond, which means there's one spot on that molecule that's reactive and can give up an electron or create free radicals, oxidative stress, what have you. And so if you're out in the sun, but you're not built out of polyunsaturated or monounsaturated fatty acids, you've got your cell membranes comprised of strong saturated animal fats. You're not going to see an instance of an uptick in cancers because your skin is made by the Creator. And even if you're not into God at all, maybe evolution will strike you because there's so much evolution. We all came out of Africa. We all or off the equator, and some of us migrated to different areas, and our bodies changed over time, and we're still 100% human, all of us. But it just shows that God made us in His image, and that image is DNA that can mutate and replicate and change and learn and grow and evolve. All right, so that's one thing. The DNA on this planet is quite obviously still evolving. You can see it in the Galapagos Islands. It's not foo-foo to say that DNA evolves at all. It's widely accepted, easily observable. So, shit evolves. Yeah. The sunlight. It creates the grass. Those cows can convert that into everything that you need to build a human, really. To build yourself, to rebuild yourselves, to stay strong. We're not using the whole animal, and we should be. I eat organs daily, either desiccated or frozen liver. I'll freeze it and then I'll thaw it out and eat it raw. Pre-freeze it first. I keep my feet planted on the ground, and I keep my body in the sun. The earth has a slightly negative charge. You can offset free radicals and absorb electrons from the earth by standing on it, barefoot, almost like we were designed to be on this planet. The sun, UVB rays will penetrate your skin and hit saturated acids and cholesterols, those evil cholesterols. Ugh, that you, by the way, if you don't eat cholesterol, your body just makes more. It loves the shit, needs it, so. Alright, so you got all these good animal cholesterols, not vegetable oil and margarine, which ruined my teeth as a child. So painful. My kids don't have cavities. They don't eat margarine either, and I was always thought that my bad teeth were genetic, but they weren't. Anyway, the UVB rays will interact with these cholesterol molecules and these saturated fats, and they will create a hormone, vitamin D, and also nitric oxide and precursors. And these are all vital for heart health and general health. I used to think that milk came naturally with vitamin D as part of it, so I thought it was good, but it's not. It's added. So you want the real D. Sorry, I was born in 1980. I'm like right there on the cusp of being a millennial sometimes. But you want the, I mean, just, have you ever seen an animal that hides in the shade besides a human? Every animal I've ever owned fights to get some sunlight. It'll chase the little sliver around the room. And if you go out and bask in it, you'll love it too. And that's like God smiling on you and telling you to stay out here. So I stay in the sun. And I believe that eating one cow, a guy my size, I'm about 165 now, and like I said, I started at 240. I've reversed all those conditions. My teeth have gotten stronger. My teeth were rotting out of my head as a child, and as an adult I had periodontitis, like the worst form of gum disease. I had bone loss. I had to have a bone graft done to my entire lower mandible, and that hurt. And the gums were receding, and I would never even tear open a package with my teeth because I was afraid that my bottoms would fall out. And now they're tough. The gums have grown back. I do not brush with toothpaste at all. I floss and use a water pick. I brush occasionally with water and a soft brush, but of all societies in the developed or undeveloped world, the ones with the least dental problems or cavities anyway are people that don't even brush. So I'm not going to give up brushing, and my breath doesn't stink is the point. I'm still married, so I just had to question whether what God wants for us is to continue to punish our bodies with these foods. And so there's a lot of arguments to be made about why plants, and they're all false. They're all observing false data. And I'll tell you more about epidemiology and the levels of data. But let me just say, if you're presented with data that claims a fact or is settled science, more often than not, it is an observational study, which is the very first step in the scientific process. But it is not the end. It's the first step. So you observe things and you infer by correlation what you think is going on. At this point, you've isolated very little. But you can generate a hypothesis with this type of observational study. And if there's enough of an associated risk, you might have something, but you still cannot draw causation from an observational study. You need an experiment. An experiment is something where variables are controlled and outcomes can be predicted and documented, repeatable. Okay? If not, then you have a poorly crafted experiment. And most often you have no experiment at all. So there's never been anything to corroborate Ansel Keys' 7-country study and the diet heart hypothesis from my generation and the ones before that got hit with the you need to avoid animal fats and cholesterol and eggs and all this stuff. So those guys, they never even had an experimental data to back up his settled science. And look where we got. We got everybody eating seed oils. If you look at the correlation, an observational study of seed oils, they correlate and they correlate pretty well with cancers and diabetes and macular degeneration, blindness, progressive blindness. So anyway, settled science. All the experimental data that you can dig up and all the meta-analysis show that replacing saturated fats with unsaturated fats or anything other leads to a higher mortality. And it's not just the mortality, it's your health span. People like to say that we live longer now because of medicine. Maybe some do, but it's mostly just the mortality of infant rate. Like, it was really exceedingly rare for kids to make it to age 5 in our primitive days. I mean, just predation among other things, but death during childbirth, all kinds of stuff. With modern medicine, we have improved that metric, but if you correct for that, we're not living longer, and we're sick for like 20 years at the end of our life. That's not good. I want to be healthy. So anyway, all of the aspects of my life I'm trying to improve upon is for one ultimate goal: to please God. And I think that's important because I think God wants us to reflect the best in Him. And a guy my size can live off of about a cow a year. That's one death. And if you graze it on a paddock where they rotate and you put other animals on there with them and let them live in their natural environment, it's a net positive for the environment. They're doing regenerative agriculture. You can look it up. It's fantastic. It's good for the planet. It reverses man-made greenhouse gas emissions and sequesters carbon into the soil. But that one animal gets to live a protected life and then die quickly. Wild animals don't die quickly. Animals on farms where they produce corn, wheat, soy, everything, don't die quickly. They're poisoned underground. They're run over. They're shot by machine gun fire. They're eradicated with insecticides and pesticides. And their bodies are left there to waste. And God doesn't like that. And if you think He does, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think He does. I think that me coming face to face with the reality that something has to die in order for me to live my best life and have the nutrients to support the body that God gave me, or that I evolved with. If you just want to cut it out, I don't care. This can be a secular argument because the data don't care if you're religious. The data bear out. I believe the data are the language of God. Physics, chemistry, biology. This is the other things, the other text that we've discovered. We discovered the Bible first, and it's led us to other texts. How about that? A few scientific principles. You've got those observational studies. Then you need to go into some sort of trial, randomized controlled clinical trials. You can look at mechanistic data from chemistry and see why would this work or will this not work. And you can find out if it's even possible and what might trigger gene expression or regulation of different hormones. But it's all easily observed. You can follow it. And then there's a meta-analysis, considered often the gold standard. There's other forms of experiment along the way, but just to shorten it, the gold standard would be to take multiple, 70, 80, 100 other studies, both from all tiers, observational right down to randomized controlled trials, and have those all analyzed together. And you usually get a pretty good picture. The American College of Cardiology did this with all available data and reversed all their decisions on red meat and saturated fat. So there's no argument now for that. If you want to talk about humane farming, so do I. We can buy properly raised animals and support it. This is a free market. This is America. One of the last beacons of hope left, except for maybe Canada right now, who's fighting a fight. But my day, I got to wrap this up. I wake up, I work out, I break my fast because I believe it should take me a while to earn some food. If I absolutely do need to recover, I'll drink milk or honey, and I'll take honey, usually together. And it's a great after workout. Sometimes I'll have a Fit Aid because they're delicious and I'm human. And I don't feel like it's poisoning me. I'm just minimizing the intake of plant defense chemicals at every chance. And is it a binary decision every time? Net negative, net positive. I eat about 3/4 pound to a pound of beef, hamburger meat, usually every day for my breakfast first meal. I'll usually after that have a cup of coffee with half and half. I don't do heavy whipping cream anymore. A lot of keto fanatics are only going to do heavy whipping cream. I'm telling you that almost all of them are mixed with carrageenan or polysorbate, and those are terrible for you. And 1 gram of carbs is not going to affect you. Like if you're actually eating a ketogenic diet, 1-2 grams of carbs from milk is not going to affect you. And if you're eating a bunch of keto bullshit, then who cares anyway? All right. And then I'll eat fruit throughout the day. I'll drink a lot of milk. I drink a crap load of milk throughout the day, probably a quart a day, maybe a little more. Always 100% whole milk. And then I'll try to have a steak or more burger and eggs for dinner. I get free range eggs because chickens are not vegetarians. If you see vegetarian fed anything that says chicken or pork, you're buying an animal that was unhappy and unhealthy. If you want to support animals with good lives, then pay more for your eggs and I get happy eggs. And I have to trust the label. I can't go meet all the farmers, but we do have a place down the road where a dude lets us see the chickens that hatched our eggs or laid them, and we get our honey there. So cheers to Desert Bloom. And then I try to stop eating by about 9 o'clock. I eat organs. I'll drink orange juice. That's the only juice that I'll drink. And we can get into that on a future little thing here. This is just, a lot of people have been asking me a lot of questions, and my wife has been suggesting that I start a podcast, and I don't know how to do it. And I don't want to make money for telling people. Well, that was the end of the video. Maybe not. I don't know. It says maximum file size. Anyway, I'll wrap it up with this. You have to, anytime you hear science, if you want to think for yourself, you have to find out what tier of science are they spouting from. What sort of science is it? Is it just that they observed that people who eat meat die of cancer? Because in America, people who eat meat is people who eat anything with meat in it. And like fried chicken, cheeseburgers and fries, buffalo wings dipped in soybean oil sauce, deep fried in soybean oil. Like, yeah. Talk about meat, or you talk about real animal-based nutrition, which is the least destructive to the planet, the least destructive to the animals, respectful of the animal's life, and observes your connection with this planet. So, another thing that I'd like to say is, besides considering where your data came from, one principle in science, it's called Occam's razor. It used to be just called common sense, but it wasn't that common anymore. And it says that the simplest solution is often the best. So, keep it simple. Stay grounded. Literally. I'm out.